Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ namasami. Blessings, good evening. In Buddhism we have the what we call the three refuges, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, also called the triple gem, or the three jewels, Tiratana. And it's something that one keeps coming back to if you have faith in the Buddhist path and aspire to follow the teachings of the Buddha for the end of stress and suffering. And you keep coming back to these three gems, jewels, because they give us direction. And the Buddha can look at the Buddha in the terms of the historical Buddha as a human being, even though he lived a long time ago now. But we believe he did live in the world 2,500 odd years ago. And he practiced, left the home life going into the forest, cultivated the path of sila, restraint, moral restraint, samadhi, concentration, developing states of calm, panya, wisdom, developing insight into the Four Noble Truths, understanding what is suffering, its cause, the cessation of suffering, and what is the path that leads to the end of suffering. And realized full awakening as a Buddha, self-enlightened Buddha. Or you could just say the Buddha also symbolizes certain qualities. So if you come into the hall, you bow to the Buddha statue. You're aspiring to those, develop and reach those same qualities in your own heart. The wisdom, the compassion, the purity of mind, meaning the mind that is free from impurities, mental impurities, rooted in greed, anger, delusion of all sorts. So whether you recollect the Buddha in terms of the historical person or the qualities that that person embodied, represented, this is something you keep coming back to over and over again. The Dharma is the truth of the way things are, but also the teachings that the Buddha gave, we call the Dharma. So of course if you're practicing, you have faith in the Buddha as an enlightened, wise teacher, and you aspire to follow and practice what the Buddha taught, well, you'll keep coming back to the teachings that he gave. So they're embodied in the scriptures, the Tripitaka, but also in the way of practice that we bring into our lives every day. So that gives us a whole array of values, and we call skillful means, ubaya, ways of living, ways of practicing, as well as all kinds of information, concepts, ideas, techniques, ways that we can use to develop this path that he taught for our own well-being, peace, happiness, and also for the well-being of others. And then we have Sangha. So in the highest sense, the Arya Sangha, and those who have practiced and realized the truth, following in the footsteps of the Buddha. So that can be ordained ones, monks and nuns, or lay practitioners, men and women. But those people who have penetrated the Four Noble Truths by developing this path, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, and actually experienced a whole change in their way of viewing the world, life, the way things are. So not just people who believe in the Buddha, in the Dharma and the Sangha, but people who have actually practiced and realized the truth and realized the fruits of this practice. Abandoned greed, anger, delusion, purified their mind from those mental defilements, freed their mind from suffering. So living without suffering. Or for, say, Sotapannas and Sakadagamis, those who have attained the first or second level of an enlightenment, you're living without suffering, not much suffering, just a little bit. The Buddha said a Sotapanna, stream enterer, and they still suffer, but compared to an ordinary unenlightened person, he scratched the ground and said it's the suffering of an Arya Pugala, a noble one, is compared with the finger under his nail, the dirt in the nails, under his nails, whereas the suffering of an unenlightened one is compared to all the earth in the world. There's no limit to it. An unenlightened person, there's no limit to the suffering you can endure life after life. Whereas an Arya Pugala has an end to their suffering in sight. If they're arahant, then they've reached the end, the cessation of suffering. So the Arya Pugala, the Arya Sāvaka, the Arya Sangha are the third of the triple gem. What we call the conventional Sangha, people who take on precepts, ordain as monks and nuns, live according to the discipline, the Vinaya, and dedicate their lives to the practice. They may or may not be Arya Pugalas, but they also perform a vital role because they help to preserve the way of practice by dedicating themselves to the practice and literally giving up everything else in life to become a monk or a nun, live in a disciplined way with a very high level of moral integrity, living, say, without possessions, so to speak, without money, without property, practicing celibacy and dedicating themselves to realizing the truths that the Buddha taught, and they still have a vital role to play. To preserve the teachings, study, learn the teachings, pass them on to others, both as in the form of talks and explanation, but also just through example. And they provide kind of living proof, because of course that the teachings are valuable and what the teachings are, because the Buddha passed away a long time ago, and one of the sufferings of unenlightened beings is that they're full of doubt. Skepticism, doubt, uncertainty. Even for people who have come in contact with the Buddhist teachings, there'll still be doubts coming up. Was the Buddha really enlightened? Is this really a good path to follow? Is it out of date? Can I do it? Can I practice what the Buddha taught? All kinds of doubts based on our conditioning and views and attachments and beliefs. We have skepticism, uncertainty, doubt. So the presence of Sangha in the world helps to confirm, maybe you could say, confirm that this is a valid way of practice, meaningful way of practice, even if you personally are not able to become an ordained monk or nun. You can still recollect the qualities of Sangha, meet with Sangha, support Sangha, practice together with Sangha, at least from time to time. So they give you this confirmation that this practice is valid, it's worthwhile, it's meaningful. So many people will say that, or maybe they started their interest in Buddhism reading books, hearing talks, but still not that committed to the path. But then when they meet Sangha, ordained monks and nuns, the level of commitment, sincerity, the faith, the inspiration goes up. Because they realize, there are people in this world willing to commit full time, wholeheartedly to this practice. And of course, Sangha live by the guidelines, the principles of the Dharma, the Vinaya that the Buddha taught. So they're a constant reminder to the world, anyone who comes in contact with them, that you can live relatively peacefully in this world. Of course, if it's, Sangha are still practicing as well, they still have their own suffering, mental defilements, but they remind us of the path. And because of the high level of discipline and commitment to the practice, then just recollecting Sangha, meeting them, can give us calm, stability in our lives, confidence that this is something good, worthwhile. Sangha give daily blessings, either in their meditation, chanting, or even, say, when receiving alms, food or other requisites, often will give a blessing, or on different occasions, Sangha give blessings, birthdays and marriages, and funerals as well. Sangha will give blessings, and that can uplift people's hearts. They perform an important role in the world. Someone mentioned to me the other day that they knew a Burmese person, someone from Myanmar, whose sister was driving a motorcycle going to the market, I think, along the road, and then crashed into another motorcycle driven by another lady. But because they're driving quite fast, the impact was very severe. So the lady that this person knew of, thrown from the motorcycle, severely injured, lots of cuts and bruises, and the motorcycle landed on top of her, so it knocked her out. And people crowded around, as they do, and tried to revive her and found that she was not breathing, it seemed. No pulse, no breathing, so it seemed like she had died. And there was blood everywhere, so severe injuries, bruises, and they thought she must have died. But an ambulance was called and the person was put onto the ambulance. But before they put onto the ambulance, because they were outside a Buddhist temple, Buddhist monk came out, the abbot came out, and he sat down next to the unconscious woman, thinking she had died. He was told, I believe he was told she was dead. So he chanted for her, chanted a blessing, and he sprinkled holy water on her. And then she was lifted into an ambulance and taken off to the hospital, where at first the doctor thought she was dead. Everyone thought she was dead. And then she was taken into the hospital and suddenly she sat up. Suddenly she woke up, sat up. Even though she's covered in bruises and blood, she sat up, opened her eyes, started talking. Once she sat up, she could stand up. She could get up. She could walk. And she went home that same day. So it seemed like a miraculous recovery. And the doctor couldn't explain it, because her injuries were quite serious, but at the same time she seemed to be able to recover from a point of being unconscious, and even they thought she had been dead, she was dead. And the doctor asked, what happened? What was different with this person that they didn't die? And then someone said, when she was lying unconscious on the street, the monk came out and blessed her, sprinkled holy water on her. So never underestimate a blessing from the Sangha. So Buddha, Dharma, Sangha are our refuge, both in a conventional sense, the Buddha statue, the texts, the ordained Sangha, and then in the highest sense, the ultimate sense, the qualities that Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha embody, that we aspire to practice and develop for ourselves. Of course, the goal of enlightenment is a long-term goal for most people. Occasionally, you have the good fortune to meet a practitioner who perhaps reached Nibbana, enlightenment, very quickly. But they're very few and far between. For most people, it's a long-term goal. So you keep that in mind as you practice. You're practicing in a way that you're developing the qualities, the right causes and conditions and the right qualities in your heart that will free your mind and heart from suffering. But this may take some time. It was one of the biggest obstacles in the beginning of Dhamma practice, whether you're just sitting down to meditate like we are tonight, or just generally as you practice, is impatience for results. Because all of our kind of cultural conditioning these days is like that, isn't it? You get a job, you want instant success in your career. You want money, you want promotions, you want recognition, you want to show things, show people, yourself and others. You want to be able to impress others that you're getting on in what you're doing. Generally, that's how we look at things. So if you start following the Buddhist path, sincerely meditating, keeping precepts, we tend to bring that same mindset in. I want to see results from all this sacrifice, the dharma, the generosity I practice, the precepts I've kept, the meditation I've done. I want to see some results. We can't help but think in that way because of our conditioning, what's gone before, and we are influenced largely, not totally, but largely by people around us, parents, family, friends, and then wider culture, society. And in one sense, it's not wrong to wish for results and success, because you need motivation, and you are aiming at certain things. You're aiming to cultivate understanding of what is wholesome and unwholesome in our thinking and then in our actions, and abandoning the unwholesome because it causes us suffering. Cultivating the wholesome, the skillful, through body, speech and mind, because it brings us happiness and improves our life. That's a goal, whether it's a long-term goal to completely remove all unwholesome, unskillful qualities from the mind, or just in one meditation you're aiming at that. But still the impatience will slip in. We become impatient with our restless mind, with the doubts, with the worries, with the anger. So patience is always this very useful base quality to develop and to cultivate. One of the ways we develop patience and the right attitude in practice is just learning to talk to oneself correctly as you meditate, as you do things in your practice, in your day, in your life. Ask yourself, how do I talk to myself? We spend a lot of time discussing, judging, thinking about what other people say, people around us. But what do we say to ourselves from moment to moment? And in meditation you can notice that. What are you saying to yourself? Maybe right now as you're listening to this talk, maybe you're already talking to yourself in your mind about something else you're going to do later. Or maybe you are agreeing with what I say, or disagreeing, or just thinking about totally unrelated things. But what are you saying to yourself from moment to moment? That's part of our practice, becoming more aware of that. Sometimes Buddhists have the idea, if you meditate, you're aiming to have no thought in your mind, just a blank emptiness in mind. And we hear teachings about emptiness, peace of mind, states of samadhi where the mind is one-pointed without any thought, no distractions, no hindrances, and so on. And there's a role for that. And, the experience of emptiness is not completely remote from what we're doing, but we have to learn how to use thought, train our thought. That's partly what you're doing in meditation, even if you're focusing, concentrating your mind on one thing, such as the breath. You might use thought to get there. Just telling yourself, watch the breath. That's a thought, isn't it? How you're talking to yourself, the attitude, the instructions you give yourself. And then of course what to do when your mind doesn't follow the instructions, because as we know, our minds are very stubborn. You say, watch the breath. You either hear the teacher telling you that, or you tell yourself that, or you put on the recording or the YouTube or whatever it is and listen to the guided instructions. Well, it's only the beginning, and then it's what's going on in your mind as you do it. And straight away your mind will start talking about other things. Maybe with doubt you might say, oh, this is a waste of time, I'm thinking too much and my mind is all over the place, or I'm falling asleep. I should be doing something else. This is a very common kind of first initial reaction to meditation. The mind is suggesting, I should be cleaning the house, doing some work, talking to someone, doing something more enjoyable, maybe some form of entertainment. There'll always be something else you can think of, and your mind goes to that. Or maybe we fall into aversion. I don't like this, my mind is not peaceful. Why am I doing this? This is painful. Maybe there's physical pain in the body, maybe the mental pain, maybe memories coming up, unpleasant ones. Why do I have to sit here thinking about this stuff? So maybe we go to aversion, and so on. But all of this is what you could say, how are we talking to ourselves as we meditate? What is the attitude we're having? What is the flavour or the tone of our thinking? And part of meditation is learning to guide your thought so it becomes a useful tool, rather than just trying to get rid of it or destroy thought, which tends to be coming from what we call vipavadanha, craving to get rid of. Try to use thought skillfully. Train it, develop it, because it's just a function of mind, just like memory is, which is very close to thought. Thoughts tend to be fed and strung along by memory and how we remember things, past experiences, information, images. Also feelings of pleasure, pain, or neutral feeling. These are the raw data that we can use as we meditate, but we have to learn how to use them, rather than just form or follow a reaction of liking, disliking, wanting to hold on to, wanting to get rid of. This is one reason why we listen to Dharma, come to places like this, because you're getting some wholesome inputs by listening to Dharma or reading Dharma, chanting, reciting verses that are coming from the Dhamma, being in a place of practice with fellow practitioners and so on. All of these you might call are wholesome inputs which help stimulate some wise, useful thinking. But then you also have to do your part through your own practice and develop this ability to watch your mind and work out what's going on. As Luang Por Chah said, your aim is to cultivate the skillful thoughts, the ones that will bring you some understanding and help you to calm down, be more at peace in yourself, but also to understand things. Just like eating fish, you eat fish, there'll be bones, you don't want bones, you just take them out, but you want the meat of the fish that you're eating. We don't want to throw all thought out, but we want to use thought, keep the good ones, the useful ones, and train to develop and bring them up more. And then abandon the more negative, harmful ones, useless ones, random ones, meaningless ones. The meaningless chatter of the mind, we can afford to let that go. But the useful ones and the ability of the mind to think things through in a reasoned way, a wise way, that's something to develop. So it takes practice. And recollecting Dhamma is a really good way to begin meditation. Recollecting the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, recollecting teachings, reminding yourself of teachings, can be a very quick way to settle down as you meditate. Whatever works for you, whatever has worked in the past, so you can remember. Memory is another thing. You can't just expect to get rid of memory. That's not natural, is it? You can remember things, but you can use memory. So the more pleasant memories, you can remember stuff things, events, people, ideas that bring you some pleasure, and if it's associated with the practice of Dharma, it can be quite useful to remember past experiences. What did I do? Say, if you meditated before on being peaceful, sometimes to actually stop, pause and think, what happened when I was peaceful? What did I do? How was I practicing at that time? What were the supportive conditions? Occasionally you can even get into a state of calm samadhi by just remembering a previous state that you experienced. Oh, it felt like this, I was doing this, I was putting my mind on the breath like this, and then bang, you're there. Of course it won't always work, often because we have a lot of wanting, desiring, but it can work sometimes. Or at the very least you remember a previous meditation where things seem to come together and bring up some of the same attitudes, energy, positive qualities that you were developing before. Or in a similar way you can remember, obviously we can remember many negative, unpleasant things in our life, but we can learn from them if we bring the right attitude. Say, well, this memory of this unpleasant experience I had, something painful, some illness or injury, some conflict with another person, some disappointment in life that came up. What was that? What happened there? Can I learn from this? Can I gain some insight from this rather than just putting your mind on a repeat loop of self-hatred or hatred for another person, or getting stuck into disappointment and despair. So even the things that go wrong, the painful experiences, we can learn from and we can develop skillful thinking around them. Of course, having said that, we also give the instruction, when you meditate, go to the breath and let go of everything else. So people often have confusion because they'll be like, so should I be thinking things through or should I be with the breathing? There's not always one simple answer here. As you meditate, you have to deal with different experiences, different states of mind, different physical feelings, different mental states of mind and memories that come up. So generally speaking, your number one priority is to meditate and bring up mindfulness, to pay attention and to know your body and mind from moment to moment. So we use an object like the breath. But then there are obstacles and hindrances that come up to the mindfulness practice. So that's where you may have to reflect and use other skillful means. And learn how to talk to yourself more skillfully if you're getting caught into a lot of negativity. Ajahn Chah used to say, everything is teaching us. So it's, even when you're not peaceful, there's a lot of stuff coming up in your mind, memories, anxiety, worries, fear, greed, desire. It's teaching you something that you can learn from, but you have to bring in the right attitude and say, well, I can't be with the breath at the moment, I'm just thinking too much about whatever it is. So ask yourself, well, what's going on here? Why? What's the problem? How serious is it? If it's anxiety, maybe there's actually is something you need to be concerned about in your life. Anxiety about health or money or some person that you care for, and they're coming up in your thinking, well, maybe there's a reason for that. So it's not like, oh, all anxiety is bad, get rid of it. Maybe there's something you need to understand. But the goal is to let go. And sometimes we let go through understanding. You just go, oh, this is a natural concern I have about some health issue or some problem in my life that's coming up or has come up. So you understand what it is, you understand the cause of your anxiety. But as you become more aware, more mindful, you reflect, oh, but the actual endless worry and anxious thinking doesn't help solve the problem. It's pointing to a problem, which I do need to know about, but it in itself is only wearing me out and making me tired, frustrated. So I should let go of the worry. And you work to establish mindfulness and let go of that worry. See it as impermanent, as a passing mental state, and not give it importance. But it doesn't mean to say there's nothing at all there, but you're learning how to train yourself not to indulge it and attach to it at that moment. The same with pleasant desires for pleasant things. It's not that you don't get some pleasure from the things you like in life, but it's more the obsession when it takes over the mind and you keep thinking about it. That's when your aim is to bring up mindfulness, to bring your mind back to a place of balance. So maybe the Buddha said reflect on the disadvantages of that pleasure. At the very least, maybe it's temporary. The thing you enjoy, your favourite food, the favourite thing, is good, but it's only so good because it doesn't last forever. The pleasure doesn't last forever. Maybe the pleasure fades the more you indulge it. Maybe it's associated with a lot of pain as well. Your favourite food eventually leads to feelings of, you feel bloated or sick if you keep eating it. Or disappointment when the pleasure passes, or the disappointment of the ending of that pleasure when you've attached without much clarity or understanding. You just feel disappointed. Reflecting on that, thinking it through, or talking to yourself as you meditate, you can maybe understand your desires better and how to deal with them with more skill. So thought can be a really useful tool as you meditate. We do need to learn to put it down as well. That's why we have these meditation objects like the breath. But while you're practicing and training, you'll need to use thought too. To understand things, to remind yourself what you're doing. So we can use thought to let go of thought as well. And as I was saying earlier, just recollecting that which is good, noble, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, that's a form of wise thinking, skillful thinking. Even that alone can uplift the mind, bring it up out of a place of despair, disappointment, confusion, doubt, worry. So the Buddha said, when you're afraid and you don't know what to do, because when you're afraid and fear overcomes you, often you feel helpless, don't know what to do, how to deal with it. Think of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, the triple gem. That may be enough to pull your mind together at that time when you're panicking or suffering in an extreme way. Just thinking of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha can improve how you feel and clear your mind at that time. So you've always got that available to you. The more you commit to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, then the more it becomes something you can use in life to give you guidance, direction, but also actually to pull your mind out of states of stress and suffering. So I'll leave you with these reflections tonight.